Thank you for having me present today. Just a little background information. I've been driving plug-in vehicles since 2012. My wife has as well. My youngest daughter has one. My dad has one. My brother down in Houston has one. So I'm speaking from experience today. I am the executive director for the Texas Electric Transportation Resources Alliance. If you'd like to check out our website, that's txev.org. Now, electric vehicles in an evacuation. Things to consider. Electric vehicles take a very long time to recharge. Well, many newer models can actually recharge to 80% of the battery capacity in 15 to 20 minutes on a DC fast charger. And when I'm on a road trip, so that it doesn't detract from the amount of time it takes to reach my destination, I feed my car when I feed myself. In other words, I'll have a meal at the time that I'm charging so that I'm not really losing any time on the trip. A lot of people think electric vehicles can't go very far before having to recharge. The average EV today has a range of 250 to 300 miles. Mine has 320 miles of range, and I'm actually going to test that today. As soon as I leave this meeting, I'm driving to Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado in an electric vehicle, and we've got it all mapped out. We know where we're going to stop to charge, and it's going to be a hoot. We're even taking electric bicycles with us. Electric vehicles, a lot of people think, catch fire very often. In fact, in the United States today, there are 200,000 internal combustion engine fires in vehicles every year. Statistically speaking, EVs are much safer than that. A lot of people think there aren't enough chargers out there, and 99% of the time, if you can charge at home, you're just going to charge at home. And believe it or not, even a 110-volt standard outlet in your home, if you're like the vast majority of Americans and drive 40 miles a day or less, that 110 outlet is all you need to recharge your vehicle and replenish that 40 miles of driving. If you're driving further than that, you can put a level 2 charger in, and these are also available publicly. Those will charge about 25 miles of range for each hour you're plugged in. And then, of course, there's DC fast chargers that are way too powerful to put in your home, but those can refill 300 miles of range in as little as 15 to 25 minutes. A lot of people think that there aren't enough electric vehicles to even be concerned about this issue. Right now in Texas, there are 279,000 plug-in vehicles registered, and that is increasing at a rate of 50% a year. By the end of this year, we should have around 375,000 plug-in vehicles on the roads of Texas. And a lot of people are very worried that electric vehicles will crash our electric grid. And EVs actually are going to stabilize the grid and will provide energy to run homes, to run hospitals, fire departments, and police stations when the grid goes down, and we'll have more on that later. This is the adoption rate in Texas. You can see that we're right along the curve for 50% per year, and by April of 2026, we're going to have about 600,000 of these vehicles on our roads. Now, what drives this change in this adoption rate is that buyer opinion changes based on experience, and this is from numbers from the annual owner survey on Consumer Reports. So in the United States today, if you have no experience with electric vehicles, 40% of the people say they will never own one. If they see one in their neighborhood, it drops to 22%. If they know one that has one, it drops to 17%. If they've ridden in one just a few times, it drops to 10%. And if they drive one just a few times, it drops to 4%. So we go from 40% negative to 4% negative, and there are actually things that EVs aren't suited for right now. If you're doing heavy-duty towing over long distances on a very regular basis, EVs aren't the answer today. I believe they eventually will be, but that 4% isn't crazy people. It's just the fact that there are some things that EVs don't do well yet. And where are the EVs and the EV chargers? This is from the Clean Cities website for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and the dark red areas are the highest EV adoption levels, and as you would expect, it's in the major cities, but it is starting to branch out into rural areas. Those tan counties are actually, they have EVs out there. So only the white counties in Texas right now have 0 EVs registered, so it is spreading from the cities outward, and that's what we would expect to happen as range increases. Now, what is Buc-ee's doing? You know, Buc-ee's is a huge Texas tradition. These are Buc-ee's locations that have chargers. The blue ones actually are right near where a Buc-ee's is, but there's already somebody that has a number of chargers there, so Buc-ee's didn't install them. But you can see that right around Colleen, there's one Buc-ee's that has 51 DC fast chargers at that location. Now, what is Texas doing? Right now, we have started to roll out the NEVI funds, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, with grants from the federal government, and the beginning of that plan was actually formulated by my organization working with the legislature, and we will have DC fast charging every 50 miles on the major interstates of Texas. And this won't be just one. This is a minimum of 4 plugs to charge vehicles simultaneously. But as we've seen, there will be larger installations. The average Buc-ee's installation was around 20. These are on the major interstates, and it is to establish a border-to-border transportation program. The next step for Texas is this plan. This is phase 2, and this is going to happen over the next 5 years. And this is at least one DC fast charger setup, again, with 4 plugs minimum, in all of the county seats of Texas or wherever the local authorities decide is best for the state. Along the coastal areas, along evacuation routes, there will be 50% more density than there will be further up into, say, the Panhandle or far west Texas to aid in evacuation efforts. One of the things that people don't realize, I mentioned earlier that a 110 outlet or a 240 outlet can be used for traveling. These are facilities that have NEMA 1450 or 1430 outlets, so 30 amps or 40, up to 50 amps of electric supply. And the item that's in the background behind the map there is a portable charger that can plug into either a NEMA 1430 or a NEMA 1450 outlet, allowing you to charge an electric vehicle on the road, again putting in between 25 and 35 miles per hour or miles per hour of charging. And that actually is something that's in my car right now that I take on the road. So if I get into a place where there isn't a lot of charging, I do have the possibility of plugging in at NEMA plugs, and these are available at RV parks, trailer parks, campgrounds, things like that. Anywhere an RV might go and plug in, an electric vehicle can go and plug in and recharge. This is a little more detailed map of Texas, and the interesting thing here is green is level 2 charging, orange is DC fast charging, but the blue are people's residences. And this is an important thing in evacuations to be thinking about. People are allowing electric vehicle drivers to come to their home and plug in there and charge. Typically, that would be a level 2 charger, so again, 25 miles of range per charging. And this is a network that I think your organization can help grow if we grow awareness of this as a capability, and it aids in the ability to evacuate from coastal areas. Zoomed in, you can see a lot of the blue here. This is in the north there, that's the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Houston down in the lower right, and then Austin over to the left. Now this is actually from my family history. When Hurricane Ike hit the Houston area in September 2008, my brother's family decided to evacuate from Houston to Colleyville, Texas, which is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, to stay with us. He was driving an internal combustion engine vehicle, a Nissan Pathfinder. By the way, this is my brother that now does have a plug-in vehicle. The gas tank size was 21 gallons. The EPA rating for the vehicle was 20 miles per gallon in the city, 26 on the highway, so a little bit better than most pickup trucks today, which should give a range of 546 to 420 miles. During that evacuation, it was bumper-to-bumper traffic most of the way. It was 9 hours instead of the normal 4 hours to get from his house to mine. And his actual range dropped to right around 170 miles because gasoline-powered vehicles get much worse mileage in bumper-to-bumper traffic, as you can see from the EPA rating, than EVs do. EVs, when they're in stop-and-go traffic, actually regenerate when they're braking and put more energy back into the battery. And when the car comes to a stop, the electric motor is not running at all, so it's not pulling any voltage. Only the air conditioning and entertainment systems do. So electric vehicles in bumper-to-bumper traffic actually outperform by a wide margin gasoline-powered vehicles. Now, what happened to my brother is about halfway to the Dallas-Fort Worth area around Centerville, he called me up and he was very low on gas, and the gas stations along I-45 were all sold out. So fortunately, he could tell me where he was located. I went online, did a search for gas stations that were 5 miles off the highway near him. I was able to call that gas station and direct him to it, and he was able to refuel. Now, if that evacuation were to happen today, and as an example, I used the Chevrolet Blazer EV, the battery capacity compared to the gasoline, you get 21 gallons. The battery capacity is measured in kilowatt hours, so it's 85 kilowatt hours. The EPA range is 103 miles it's miles per gallon. The equivalent is like a vehicle that gets 103 miles per gallon in the city and 88 on the highway. So notice the city number is larger for an electric vehicle. That's stop and go traffic. The highway number is lower. So it's the inverse of the way gasoline powered vehicles work. The range is stated by the EPA to be 279 miles on a fully charged battery. The actual range in bumper-to-bumper traffic would actually jump up to about 350 or more miles of range, meaning that they could drive from Houston to the Dallas-Fort Worth area without even stopping to recharge. Now, other considerations, if you're stranded, say, in a blizzard or an ice storm, the heater or the air conditioner can be run for days if you're stranded. And as an example of that, I mentioned we're going camping in Rocky Mountain National Park. We are actually going to use our car's camp mode, which allows us to run the stereo and the heater all night long. It's going to get down to below 30 degrees at night up in the mountains, so we're really excited to give that a try. But based on things we've read, it looks like we could actually go 5 days with that heater running and not deplete the battery. We'd be able to drive to a nearby charger and recharge after that. EV motors do not require air. There's no carburetor, there's no fuel injection, anything of that sort. So EVs can actually drive through deeper water than most gasoline-powered vehicles can, or through intense smoke if we're talking about a prairie fire or something of that sort. But of course, we don't want to recommend this. People need to breathe, and vehicles can be swept off the road by high water. Simplified drivetrains of electric vehicles allow many models to offer true all-wheel drive, allowing them to go cross-country if they need to. If they're not evacuating from an area, EVs can provide vehicle-to-home or vehicle-to-load electricity in case the grid goes down. And some EVs can even recharge other EVs. Think of it as siphoning gas from one car to another. I just mentioned vehicle-to-load. Vehicle-to-load is basically, Vehicle-to-load is basically powering one or a few devices by the power in the electric vehicle. The electric vehicle would have a 110 outlet or perhaps a 240 volt outlet, or you can use a voltage inverter for older electric vehicles to output energy from the car to run items in your house. An example of that, again, on the camping trip, the 2 electric bikes we have with us, we are going to recharge from our electric vehicle. The next type up from vehicle to load is vehicle to home. This was first advertised maybe 3 years ago for the Ford F-150 Lightning. And Ford advertised that a Ford F-150's Lightning's battery pack is large enough that it could power an average residence for up to 3 days if the grid goes down. Now, this does require a gateway for the house so that electricity doesn't bleed from the house back out to the grid, which may be under repair. And so it is a more expensive installation. The charger that includes that gateway is about $4,000. That portable charger I showed you earlier that I'm going to be taking on the road trip with me is about a $250 charger. The next step up to that is vehicle to grid, and this would allow the vehicle to actually support the grid in times of strain. During the last year, Texas has been running a virtual power plant program. It was a pilot program where people with Tesla Powerwalls, which are stationary batteries, can supply energy to the grid when it's under strain. And when the grid is under strain, electricity can cost as much as $9 per kilowatt hour, what you typically are paying 14 cents for here in Texas. That $9 an hour is a great opportunity for people who own stationary batteries or in the near future electric vehicles that can do vehicle to grid output to become energy arbitrage participants. On the vehicle to grid, when that becomes possible, think about this. We can either take school buses, which have gigantic batteries but a range of only maybe 100 miles, and use them to evacuate people that don't have vehicles or don't have reliable vehicles, or if those buses and garbage trucks and large vehicles, heavy-duty vehicles that are electric, stay in town, we can connect them to the grid or to microgrids and supply energy to keep critical infrastructure up and running. Hospitals, police stations, fire stations, things of that sort. And as I mentioned earlier, this is an example of vehicle to vehicle. We're showing two, a Hyundai and a Kia vehicle. One of them is charging the other one. So it is an extremely slow way to charge, but if somebody runs out of energy at the side of the road, we don't have to send a tow truck out there. Somebody with a vehicle to vehicle capable EV can come to the rescue. EVs available today that allow bidirectional charging, and this is vehicle to load, vehicle to grid, vehicle to home, are shown here on the screen. The most powerful one is the Ford F-150 Lightning, and it's able to output at 9.6 kilowatts, which is a pretty strong rate to output. Another thing that's available right now, on the top is Friendly Chevrolet advertises EVHQ, which is their charging network. They have a vehicle that can come to you and charge your vehicle. And they offer this as a service for people that are too busy and can't charge at home. They're located right next to a medical center, so they go and charge doctors' cars that are sitting in parking garages. But in an emergency situation, deploying a fleet of vehicles like this could help in evacuation efforts, and especially in areas where the density of energy charging is not available. The bottom vehicle is a new one that's just come out. It's a Yoshi Mobility, where the Friendly Chevrolet vehicle charges at level 2, 25 miles of range per hour plugged in. That Yoshi is a full DC fast charger, able to charge vehicles much faster. Now, some of the things we've got to think about when we're preparing evacuation and we're talking to the EV drivers out there is it would be great if we can produce a list of hotels and restaurants along the evacuation route that have EV chargers. Hotels especially, because if it's just a level 2 charger, it's very inexpensive for the hotel to install. But if you're going to sit there all night asleep in a bed, why not charge all night long? So they could put in a bank of these chargers, maybe 20 of them for the price of one DC fast charger. It'd be great to have a list of campgrounds, homeowners, and businesses along the evacuation route that will allow the use of their 240 volt outlets, or in the case of homeowners, their chargers. Well before an emergency is going to happen, if we know a hurricane is coming in, we should start broadcasting PSAs reminding EV drivers to charge to at least 90% as soon as possible, and if possible, carry a portable 240 volt charger with them. For people that charge at home, they typically fill their car up overnight, so it's not something we have to remind them of. It's the multifamily housing dwellers that are going to need to be reminded. We don't want them trying to charge at the very last minute. We should position mobile chargers like the trucks I showed you just a moment ago along the evacuation routes, fully charged, ready to go. Erect portable digital signs to direct EV owners to those chargers or other chargers that are available. Provide phone numbers for roadside charging assistance, and have a phone bank of people that driver can call in on their mobile phone, ask for directions to the nearest charger based on their current location. And also have phone banks set up for charging location support. Other ideas, as I mentioned earlier, is use those electric school buses to evacuate, or use them for their vehicle to grid capability. These are huge batteries in their buses, and they can really do a great job for us. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is the route we're taking to Colorado, and on that route is showing each of the charging stops we're going to make. Some of those are as short as 17 minutes before we continue our way. The yellow block up there is somewhere where we're stopping just to see friends, and we'll charge. That's called an opportunity charge when you do that. The first charge inside of Colorado will be happening at a hotel while we're asleep at night. And if you want to follow our trip, and we're not going to hide anything that happens to us. If we have difficulties, we are going to publish that to the blog. but my Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube is there, and my blog is theev-angeles.com. And follow along, see how the adventure goes. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the opportunity to come speak. And if anybody has questions, feel free to ask.
Sir, do we have any questions for Buzz?
Chief, I have one question. On the list of charging and the evacuation routes that you were talking about, you had a map of all the charging stations at hotels. Is that just simply a matter of taking the two data sets and marrying them together, or is there data that is missing?
Right now, PlugShare and a Better Route Planner has that data, so they have the ability to, or drivers have the ability using those apps or those websites to locate hotels that have chargers. My personal experience was I walked to the front desk at a hotel that I was checking in one time and asked them if they had a charger, and they said they didn't. When I drove around to the back, there were 3 chargers there. So even the staff at a hotel may not realize that they have an EV charger there. So for making evacuations go better, it would be great not only to marry that data, but make sure that hotels are plugging that information into PlugShare, into a Better Route Planner. Those are websites and apps for EV drivers, and in that way support the evacuation efforts. Did that answer your question?
It did, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Buzz?
Yes, Benson from Harrisburg. So 2 questions. One, are these websites third-party websites, or is it a formal organization under any of the EV companies that kind of look and validate the information? Like, who's the validation part of these websites?
The interesting thing, especially in the case of PlugShare, it's EV drivers themselves. So just like Yelp, you write a review of chargers that you've been to. And so I've avoided chargers where the previous reviews have said, oh, it breaks down very often, or it's in a dangerous looking area, So there are reviews like that. I'm not sure what the clearinghouse is for the data. Unfortunately, I don't have that answer.
Okay. Second follow-up question was on some of the chargers where it's fast charging and people are leaving their cars there to charge. How is it sequential for the next person to be able to use the charger, especially in these evacuation routes? Is it time frames locked in, and are these vehicles moving in and out so others can charge?
In some places like Austin, there is a time limit. I don't believe it's enforced, unfortunately, but the best way to limit somebody's time is how you charge them. And I don't mean electricity, I mean money. What happens at a Tesla charger, for instance, is if you are there 5 minutes after your car has reached whatever charging target you had set for it, they start really charging you a lot of money. So it becomes very important to move your car so as not to incur that fee. And I would recommend this is something that we do on all DC fast chargers.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, just great information here that's very helpful and debating some of the misnomers in EV. One last question on the heat. You mentioned that on stop and go traffic, there's more miles that these vehicles can do. Is heat issue with long distance traveling with stop and go traffic for the batteries to be remain cool?
No, actually, what a lot of people don't realize is electric vehicles have a radiator just like a gasoline powered car. It's a much smaller one. And so all modern batteries today are liquid cooled, and so there's a fan, there's a radiator, and there's coolant running through the battery. It's nothing super expensive. It's the same thing that's in a gasoline powered car's radiator. It's antifreeze. But it keeps that battery temperature cool. And one thing I've noticed is on Sundays when I'm comfortable, all of a sudden the air conditioner is getting a little bit cooler. The car is turning on the air conditioner in order to cool the battery. So electric vehicles today, their number one mission is to take care of that battery. And stop and go traffic at high temperatures, although it may detract from your range because you're using your air conditioner and using that water pump a lot more often, it's not going to overheat the battery unless you're, maybe in Death Valley there might be an issue, but probably not here in Texas. I've never experienced an issue at all.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one more, another follow-on question to that. Does the operator or or like hotel, gas station, wherever the charging station is that owned by the hotel or gas station? And where I'm going with that question is, do they have the ability to change what is being charged for charging, or does that come from somewhere else?
There's actually a mix of things. There are hotels that pay for their own chargers. They're usually level 2 inexpensive chargers, and they offer the electricity that they provide for free as a fringe benefit of staying at that particular hotel. Same thing with restaurants, movie theaters, things of that sort. There are other locations. I've seen hotels that had banks of, as an example, Tesla chargers, and Tesla owns those chargers, and they charge a standard rate for theirs. There are other locations where it's a mix of the two. Now, a recent bill was passed in the legislature of Texas that people need to know ahead of time what they're going to be paying for the electricity, and so there will either be digital signage or signage in the app that publishes that information, so that before somebody even plugs in, they know what they're going to be charged, just like when you pull up to a gas pump and it shows you the price of gasoline. Did that answer your question?
It did, and to your point, the purpose of that question is price gouging for electricity something that we need to be concerned about also moving into the future?
Well, greed is pretty universal, so I would definitely be concerned, just as we are with gasoline. But I think if there's an awareness with the electric vehicle charging companies that you guys are keeping an eye on that, I don't think it'll be a big issue. EV drivers themselves will squawk pretty quickly if they see that happening.
I've got 2 questions for you. The first is, what resources maybe your alliance may be providing to our rural firefighters? Because as you're driving through those areas, some of the rural firefighters may not have proper training or equipment to put out fires, because you can't fight the EV fires the same that you fight the gas engines.
True. There are organizations that teach classes in that, and that's not something that is provided by my organization. I actually changed careers because of my first plug-in vehicle. I ran out of friends that I could tell them how much I loved my car. So I actually went to work for the Chevy dealership for 6 years selling Chevrolets. I had to sell all of them to make a living, but I specialized in electric vehicles. And 35% of my sales were vehicles that had plugs on them. One of the things that would happen is the local council of governments a lot of times would put on firefighter training, and my dealership would provide electric vehicles for that training. So we didn't deliver the training, we loaned them the cars, and they brought in instructors that handled that training. But right now that is has been up to this point a purely governmental program. Through usually the councils of governments, but it is starting to become a private sector thing where education companies are putting together curriculum both for installing and maintaining electric vehicle chargers and for fire departments to put out the fires.
And then the second one is mainly for those electric grids that are owned by municipalities or government agencies. But you mentioned that the vehicles could be used to stabilize the grid. How does that partnership work with the owners? Can they opt out of that to allow opt out of allowing their vehicle to stabilize that grid, or do we have other issues that need to be worked out there?
This is a brand new concept that is just hitting the market now. So the virtual pilot program is about a 1-year-old program. The Ford F-150 Lightning, which is the first vehicle that would really do vehicle to grid, has only been out 2.5, 3 years now. So I think it's a very nascent technology, and this is something that we're going to have to work through in the near future.
All right. Well, is there anyone else? We do have one more agenda item that we have to cover, but anybody have any other questions?
Sorry, if you couldn't be now, I think she's going to make a closing remark.
Great.
But one thing I know that we recently did a tabletop in the region, and one of the questions we asked TDM and DPS was, There is currently a fuel plan for the evacuation routes out of our area. So is there a plan in place for electric vehicle charging throughout the evacuation areas on I-10, 290, and 45, 59? So I know they were going to look at that and let us know, but looking at the network that was shared today, and looking at some of the portable charging options, I hope the state takes that into account while creating the plan, just like we have the fuel plan. I'm happy to chat with someone, the T, more details on that further, on the needs that we have in our region. Thank you.
And I just wanted to say that Buzz has graciously offered his association's assistance with that, should the state want to move forward with any of those plans. He's local here in the Fort Worth area, and with virtual meetings these days, he's made himself available should we want to take that on as a group. So I appreciate your time, Buzz. Thank you for coming, and safe travels.
Thank you very much. I'm going to hit the road to Colorado electrically. Y'all have a great time.